So in this video, we're going to be taking an existing Web Intelligence report. We're going to be using InfoBurst to take the data, the underlying data from that Web Intelligence report, and we're going to be consuming it with Tableau. There'll be two workflows we're going to cover. One is to publish the hyper file created by InfoBurst up to Tableau Server. The other one is to push it out to a network share. Let's talk about the system architecture considerations for this workflow. So the input will be a SAP BusinessObjects Web Intelligence report. This report can be based on a single universe. It can have multiple data providers from different universes with merged dimensions, and it can also be based on a multi-source universe. That report is going to be consumed by InfoBurst. A little bit about the InfoBurst infrastructure. There's an application server that it runs on, and also it has a repository database. It can be Oracle or SQL Server. That repository database can either reside on the application server or a separate physical database server. The output from InfoBurst will be one of two things. It'll either be a TDE or hyper data extract or a data source on Tableau Server, or a burst or split TWBX file. Two different workflows. We're talking initially here about the TDE or hyper file. And the destinations can be a Tableau Server, can be a network share, it can be email, it can be a number of different destinations that InfoBurst supports. So let's get started with this workflow. Let's talk for a minute about the source of the data that we're going to be using here. So this is a Web Intelligence report. I'm going to go into design mode here and edit the query. What we're using here is a universe built on top of the Microsoft AdventureWorks database. So this universe has classes for currency, dates, geography, and so forth, and also the measures used in this universe. So I've created a Webby report, bringing these objects into the report, and based on that, I want to use these fields in a Tableau data extract. Now, I could also have more than one query here. I could have a second data provider pointing to another universe and then merging the dimensions and using the output from that as my source for Tableau. I could also have a multi-source universe here, which maybe has a connection to SQL Server and Oracle. But the important thing is it's being brought into this Webby report. If it's in this Webby report, I can get it, add it with InfoBurst and publish the resulting hyperfile back to Tableau. I'm going to close the query panel now. In this report, I have two tabs. One at the bottom here, we see sales by territory and categories. That's what I'm looking at right now. But in order to use this data in InfoBurst and have it be consumed by Tableau, I also have to have a tab in the report that is just a tabular format. So I've got all of the measures and dimensions across the top and all the values in this table. And so whichever dimensions and measures I use will be available in Tableau. Now I also want to point out another thing. I have the dimensions and measures from the universe, but I've also created a couple of variables. So for example, this margin variable is just a calculation, sales amount minus total product cost. And I've included that calculated field, or sorry, that variable in this raw data tab. So that means I can use variables in business objects, which are the equivalent as calculated fields in Tableau. I can have all the calculations I want in business objects and then not have to replicate them in Tableau. That's a pretty powerful feature, especially for complex reports you've already built in Web Intelligence that have a lot of variables defined that have a number of different complex calculations performed. Now that we've had a look at the report in Business Objects, the Web Intelligence report based on the AdventureWorks database, now we want to start using this in InfoBurst and create that hyperfile. So the very first thing I need to do is I need to catalog that Web Intelligence report in InfoBurst. So if I go to New and then Document, and I want to use a platform, I've defined a platform for business objects in this instance of InfoBurst that I've just called Virtual Server. In your environment, it might be called something different. So at this point, I have to go look for the folder where that Web Intelligence report is, and it just so happens to be, I believe it's in this folder. Yes, this AD Works Sales. This is the Web Intelligence report I want to use and get the data from it to use in Tableau. So I'll click OK. So it's going ahead and processing the cataloging of that document. Now it's in InfoBurst. If I double click on this icon, I can see a lot of information about this Web Intelligence report. It's giving me the path to the report in Web Intelligence, the platform that I selected. If I have more than one business objects platform, I may have different platforms here with different names. The different tabs in the report, all of the variables in the report. So these are all of the dimensions in the report that we can use to burst. So that's how you catalog a Web Intelligence document in InfoBurst. The next thing we want to do is actually create the hyperfile. Now we're going to create the burst that will create the Tableau data extract file and push it up to Tableau Server in this workflow. I'll also create a second workflow a little bit later in which we push the hyperfile to a network share. So let's go first and go new burst. I'm going to give this a meaningful name here. So I just call this Webby report to Tableau hyper data extract. I could put in a description. I'm not going to in this case. So once I've created the burst, the next thing I need to do is need to add the document. So I'm going to add that Web Intelligence report that we just cataloged. And then we're going to go to deliveries on the delivery tab. I'm going to create a new delivery from blank. With InfoBurst, you can also create delivery templates that allow you to reuse deliveries that are commonly used within your organization. So the destination here is going to be Tableau Server. I'm going to use this instance of Tableau that I've created on this InfoBurst. The project, I'm going to click on this icon to select the project from Tableau Server. I'm going to call it IBTab Workflow Examples, or sorry, I'm going to select that folder. And the name of the burst, I'm just going to call this AdventureWorks Sales. And this replace existing file. Check this if you want to run this on a regular basis and have the extract overwritten every time. If you don't have this checked, it will not overwrite it if you have the same file name. I go to Format, and I want the format to be hyper. And so this is where I want to select the tab to extract the data from. If you recall in the Web Intelligence report, there were two tabs, one that had just a tabular format of the data and one that had a fancier report breaking sales down by different dimensions. So we're going to select the raw data tab. If there is a block defined in the tab that has your data, so let's say for example you have a table of data plus you have some other formatted data, you want to select a block within a tab, you can put that here. In this case we're just taking the raw data tab, and I'm going to click on add. Once this delivery has been added, I can run this burst. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to click on burst now. And I'm going to go to timeline. So it's going to keep track of all the actions that have occurred. I'm going to pause this video while this timeline finishes. Okay, so we can see that this burst did complete successfully. A couple things I want to point out here. So at each stage in the process, InfoBurst keeps track of what it's doing. So for example, the item I've got selected right now, it's connecting to the BusinessObjects server. It's logging in with the credentials provided. It is opening the report, refreshing it, and exporting that raw data tab that we selected, creating the hyper, and uploading to Tableau Server. So InfoBurst does keep a lot of information that it keeps in an audit table. And you have access to this as an InfoBurst administrator. Now I'm back on Tableau Server in my IBTab Workflow Examples project. If I go to Data Sources now, I do see that AdventureWorks Sales data source available on Tableau Server. I can check that box, and if I have web authoring permissions for this project in Tableau Server, I can go create a new workbook. So just very quickly, I started this a minute ago where I brought in the sales amount, the product category name. I can bring in the product subcategory name to break it down even further. And simple as that. So we're using the data from a Web Intelligence report as a basis for a Tableau workbook on Tableau Server. Now, if you're don't have Tableau Server in your organization, but you're using Tableau Desktop, I'm going to be showing a workflow in a minute that pushes the Tableau data extract out to a network share. But just let me quickly show you what it looks like with Tableau Desktop accessing this data extract. So I have Tableau Desktop open on my machine now. I'm going to go connect to data. I'm going to select Tableau Server. It's going to prompt me for my credentials. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in to Tableau Server. In this case, my ID has access to a number of sites on this Tableau Server, so I'll select this Allen Dev project, and I'm just going to go sort these by the modified date. So here, this is the AdventureWorks sales data extract we created in hyper format from InfoBurst. I'm going to select that. Let's click on Update Now, and I can go ahead and go to my worksheet and start building out this visualization with Tableau Desktop at this point. In our first workflow, we used InfoBurst to create a burst to take the data from a Webby report and push it up to a Tableau hyperfile on Tableau Server. I want to show you another way of doing it, pushing out to a network share. So rather than creating it from scratch, I'm just going to right click and copy this existing burst into the same folder. And this is the copy. I'm going to open it and rename it and create a delivery to a network share. So I'm just going to call this Webby report to Tableau Hyper network share. So I've already got the AdventureWorks document added. I'm just going to click on Save for a minute, and then I'm going to go to Deliveries. I'm going to delete the existing delivery, which was to Tableau Server. I'm going to create a new one, and this time I'm going to be selecting a network share right here, and the path will be a network share we've defined in InfoBurst called InfoBurst Output. For the file name, I'm just going to do something different this time. I could just type in a name that I want the hyperfile to be. In this case, I want it to be the same name as the burst. So I've got burst name here. If I just bring this over, using the macro builder, if I click on Resolve Macros, it's going to name the hyperfile the same name as the burst. That's what I want in this case. I go down to Format next, and I want this to be a Tableau Data Source, and I want it to be in hyper format. Again, the raw data tab, and that's all I need for this. I'm going to go ahead and burst this, and once it starts to burst, I'll click on Timeline. I'll pause the video until this is done. Alright, so this burst has completed successfully. If I have a look at the folder on this machine that I set the network share up on, which is D InfoBurst Output, I can see that I've got the hyperfile created with the name of the burst like we had set it up to do. So now if you're in an environment where you don't have Tableau Server but you have Tableau Desktop, you can use this workflow. Then you can go into Tableau Desktop and connect. Just click on More here, and we go to D InfoBurst Output, and we select that hyperfile, and we can start building our visualization with that Tableau Desktop. So far in this video, we've covered the functionality within InfoBurst to extract data from a Web Intelligence report and create a hyperfile which can then be delivered to a network share or to Tableau Server. So the next part of this process will be scheduling refreshes of that data. In most cases, when you build a dashboard based on a data source, you're going to want to have it refreshed on a regular basis. It might be daily, it might be weekly or monthly or semi-annually. The idea is that you don't want to have to manually refresh them. So using InfoBurst, we have the ability to do that. But let's just have a look at this scenario. So I've created a workbook based on that hyperdata extract. We'll just have a look at the dashboard I created. It's pretty basic. It has sales by country and category and sales over time. And the intent with this use case is every day at 5 in the morning we want to refresh the underlying hyperdata extract so that this dashboard is up to date. And we will be doing that using InfoBurst. So let's build that schedule with InfoBurst. I'm going to go to New Schedule. So I've given this schedule a name, AdventureWorks Sales Hyper Extract, and a description. It's always best to put a meaningful description when you create any object in InfoBurst so that another user using the application has a good idea of what the intent is. So let's see here. So we want to go have a look at the options for this schedule. I'm not going to be going over the complete scheduling functionality of InfoBurst. I'm going to show you how it will work with this use case. So I want this to run daily, Monday to Friday. So I'm going to uncheck Saturday and Sunday. I'm going to say 0500, 5 o'clock in the morning. We're going to have it start tomorrow, and we're going to have it end a couple of years from now. Now, you can add events in InfoBurst that will determine when a schedule will run outside of the start time. So for instance, if you have an ETL process that populates your data warehouse and it's not finished by 5 in the morning, and so that would be handled using events. I'm not going to be covering that in this tutorial, but just know that that is available. So after I've got the schedule set up, I have to add the items. So this would be the burst that I want to have scheduled. So it was this Webby report to Tableau Hyper Data Extract. And click OK, or sorry, click Add. And now InfoBurst has created our schedule. So this schedule will run every day at 5 o'clock in the morning, and will update the underlying data used by any Tableau dashboards that use the hyperfile based on the Web Intelligence report. That concludes this video tutorial. Thanks for watching. To learn more about Infosol and the products and services they offer, please visit infosol.com. If you'd like more information on the InfoBurst product itself, please visit help.infosol.com. There's a number of very useful articles on that site. Once again, thanks for watching.